Hello and welcome to CNA Today Goes Live. I'm Elizabeth Neo, your host for this session. And today we're talking about something that is quintessentially Singaporean, BTOs. Today's live webinar is about balancing expectations and realities, navigating your first home purchase in Singapore. And joining me for that conversation is Minister Indranee Rajah. She's Minister in the Prime Minister's Office and Second Minister for Finance as well as National Development. We've got Eugene Tan. Eugene is Senior Estate Manager at HDB, and Eugene's held multiple roles at the sales department at HDB. He's also worked as a customer relations manager to guide first-time home buyers through their flat purchase journey. And I've also got Loraine Lee, Senior Journalist at CNA Today. Loraine has covered various topics from social issues to tech as well as housing. Loraine has also written about HDB BTO announcements as well as her personal experience in making the most of a low-floor HDB unit. And we also like you, our audience, if you're watching here, if you're dialing in online, we'd like you to be part of the conversation. We want you to send in your questions for our guests. So if you're watching on TikTok or Instagram or YouTube, you can leave your questions in the comment section. And for you guys here, you can send it on Pigeonhole. Just scan that QR code over there to submit your question. And of course, we have prizes to give away. We've got some e-vouchers. Also, for you guys who are tuning in online, we'll tell you how you can win those e-vouchers in just a bit. But for now, I just want to kick things off with Loraine, because you are fresh off this experience of purchasing your first home. Congratulations, it is a milestone. Can you tell me more about your experience? What are some of the concerns that you and your partner had?
I was really excited to finally select my flat because it's like, your first big purchase. You feel kind of like an adult, right? Like, finally got it. But the main considerations for us were like price and location. Namely, we didn't want to be shredded with too much debt at a young age. And also we wanted to be, somewhere near an MRT station, near our family, so it's easy to see our parents every once in a while.
I can sense your excitement from here. And when we talk about HDBs, HDB flats, BTOs, there's always a lively conversation in Singapore. And especially when we get into the bit about pricing, gets people really excited. And it is not uncommon to also hear people say that the prices of homes have gone up. But at the same time, we hear from the government saying that, it is committed to keeping homes affordable and accessible. So, Minister, what is the National Development Ministry and what is HDB doing to keep homes affordable?
Well, let's just take a step back and consider some figures. Every year, we have about 30,000 resale transactions. That means 30,000 flats are being bought every year. And for BTOs, it's in the ballpark of 25,000, which means that every year, 55,000 units are being purchased. And if you take that over the last 5 years, it means about 275,000 units were purchased. So actually more than that. So more than 250,000 Singaporean households or resident households were able to buy flats, which tells you something about affordability. That means that they were able to afford these flats. And how is that possible? And I know that there has been in the last few years a sense of, it's out of reach. But that's partly been a function of the COVID crunch, which meant that the demand far exceeded the supply. So there's also that sense that it's out of reach. But in the last 5 years, we have caught up with the demand supply, and we've made several moves to make things more affordable. So the first important thing that we did was the reclassification framework. Because the nature of HDB flats or any property is that those in the prime areas or those with nearer facilities or amenities will be more expensive, and those tended to be the mature estates, and those with less facilities tended to be the non-mature estates. But over time, all our estates started getting mature, right? So we did the reclassification framework where basically we give, for the areas where, like plus and prime areas, which are more expensive, there's higher subsidies, which means that it's more accessible and more affordable. But of course, it comes with various conditions. But the bottom line in terms of affordability is to look and see what proportion of your household income, or what they call the mortgage servicing ratio. And the international benchmark is about 30 to 35% of your monthly income. In Singapore, it's 25% or less. And in 2024, about 90% of the first-timer families were able to buy a BTO using either with very little cash outlay or just zero cash outlay because they're using their CPF. So, government is very much committed to making sure that housing remains affordable.
Yeah, and there's various tools to help it keep it such as you talked about. But we also know that BTO prices, they are affected by what's happening in the resale market, what's happening in the private market as well. I mean, I'm sure you've seen headlines, $1 million flats, but of course these tend to be in the resale market, and it's the price is usually agreed upon between buyer and seller. But I would like to know to what extent, the private housing and the resale market impact BTO prices. For example, we're talking about a place like Keppel. Keppel is pretty prime, right? And the private and the resale market homes, they are pretty more on the pricier side. So how does it likely to impact BTO homes there?
I will just give an overview, and Eugene might like to jump in on this. But basically, for anybody who does property valuation, you will know that in order to assess the value of a property, you look at comparables. You look at what's around you. And so if you're pricing a BTO, you also have to look at something that's comparable. You're not going to compare it to, let's say, a high-end condominium. The closest comparable to BTOs are resale flats. And resale flats obviously have a certain pricing. Then what the government does is it actually applies a huge discount to that, or what we call implicit subsidy. And then in addition to that, there may be grants, but let's take the grants out first. Then you set the pricing. So you look at comparables, usually resale, but there's a big discount. So immediately it means that BTOs will be cheaper than resale because those are the comparables. And some may ask, why do you do it this way? It's because land has a value. You cannot give away a land or a house at a very low value, because ultimately this land belongs to Singaporeans and all Singaporeans. So government cannot give it away for free. But what we do is we benchmark to market, and the market is the resale market. But to make it affordable, we apply that discount. Then after you do that, then there's a whole range of other things, which is what makes housing in Singapore affordable, provided you know the right keys and levers. What is our system based on? Our system is based on a combination of a few things. One, must have some savings. So it's good that you start saving early, because you need to have a cash portion that you put out. The next thing, and this is quite critical, is CPF. Because CPF means that you earn, a portion of what you earn goes into a savings, but by law, we require your employers to contribute as well. So your employers are also contributing to your savings, and over time, the CPF portion grows as well, that you have another pot to draw on, aside from your cash savings. Then you have the grants. And then, of course, you have the loan, and the loan can be paid out either through your CPF or through your monthly salaries. So it's having those four things together in combination that will make it affordable. Because if you try to tackle it and say, I want to buy a house today and I pay cash, it's, very, very few people can do that. But if you know how to leverage these four things, then it can be affordable, provided that you choose something suitable for your budget.
Right. So can we find out how those prices, the initial prices, are actually derived for BTOs? Because HDB sets the price, right, of each launch. So I was wondering, how are those prices derived?
I mean, actually, if you look at it, the prices of the flat itself, like what Minister has mentioned, it's actually comparable in terms of what the resale market is. And what happens is that in order to make it more affordable, and this is something that, in our customer interactions, we get very often, affordability is a key. So how do we actually do that? Now, so what happens is that with having to know what the resale prices are, and like what Minister has mentioned, we apply a significant market discount. Aside from that, with different areas, there will be also additional subsidies given to keep the price more affordable for flat buyers. Yeah, so if you look at even in the recent sales launch, October sales launch, in the southern waterfront where the Belaya residents are, with all these additional subsidies keeping in, the flats are actually capped to about 500 to 600,000 for a 4-room or even a 5-room flat. So I think HDB has put quite a bit of effort in terms of keeping these flats affordable.
Yeah.
Maybe if I could just elaborate a little bit on that, because I know people are curious, like, how do you apply a discount? Why is it that this precinct is this price, this one is another price? It's actually a function of the location and the amenities. So to understand the basic principle, let's just take 2 houses, not BTO flats, just normal houses. Let's say you have one house and it faces a beautiful park. There's water, feng shui, and it's really beautiful. And then you have the preschool nearby and the polyclinic nearby. And you have another house which is back to back, right? Exactly the same area, back to back. Then it faces this industrial estate. Then you have all the pollution coming out. And then you have you see the rubbish dump and then the dumpsters. They're exactly the same area, back to back. But which one is going to cost more? The one that faces the lake is going to cost more than the one that faces the industrial area, because it's a function of amenities and location. So now imagine it's not those 2 houses. You've got one HDB precinct here, another HDB precinct here, but this one happens to have MRT, preschool, schools, whatever, and this one not so much.
Right.
You're going to have a variation, and it's just a function of the location, which is why property agents will tell you it's location, location, location.
That's iconic line.
Yeah.
I know you talked quite a bit about subsidies and the grants and really what the HDB is doing to help make homes affordable. I have a question from Pigeonhole, so it's coming from someone in the audience, and they are asking, given the exorbitantly priced resale flats for mature estates, is there anything HDB is implementing in order to moderate these prices? So I think this person is referring to resale in mature estates.
Okay. I've got a thought, but Eugene, do you want to go first?
You want to go first?
I mean, if you talk about in terms of moderating the resale market itself, we do see $1 million flats, in the market, but this only combines, or rather, this only consists of a very minority, a very small number of resale flats that's in the market. So if you look at in terms of what HDB is doing, we have flats that has been sold over the past few years. They are actually reaching their MOP, their minimum occupational period. And we also, over the past few years, we have also introduced shorter waiting time flats. And all these flats, subsequently in the next few years, when all this gets into the market itself, it's a demand and supply kind of situation. So when there's higher demand, there's a supply for it, and that's where the resale market will then stabilize it.
And just to elaborate, so coming back to, because I think the question is basically saying it's so expensive, it's out of reach, which comes back to what I said earlier. Every year, 30,000 households are buying flats. It cannot be out of reach for resale because it's 30,000 transactions or purchases taking place every year. And the outlier is the $1 million, but actually the vast majority of resale transactions are less than that. So I think Punggol and Tampines, there are 4-room flats in the ballpark of 650,000 to 700,000. I think Yishun area, Woodlands, about less than 600,000, and then Jurong West side, less than 550,000. So there is actually a range. And step 1, I suppose, is choose within the range that suits your budget. But the second part of the question was, what are we doing to address this? And the best way to address this is actually to try to inject more supply. Because the high prices of resale is really a function of demand exceeding supply. Everybody knows it, right? So the demand is greater, then obviously the prices will go higher. But if the supply is greater, then the demand is going to come down. So We were hampered initially by the COVID crunch, but between 2021 to 2025, we launched 100,000 flats. And that has really pumped in a lot more supply. Between 25 to 27, we're going to add in another 55,000 flats. Okay. And we're also trying to make sure that we have shorter waiting times. So hopefully we can get a good number of them within 3 years. So by injecting more, it will help to moderate increase the supply, moderate the demand, and hopefully adjust the prices.
Right. So I hope that answers your question. Of course, we're taking more questions, so feel free to send them in. And so we talked a lot about pricing, and that is one of the concerns you had. You also had a concern of location. And I'm sure that is also, the concern of a lot of you here, because in the survey that you did prior, you talked about pricing and location being one of the two main factors. So Loraine, I was wondering how you and your partner decided which was more important, price or location?
When we first started applying, we dreamed of a very nice central location like many other youths, right? But we started realizing that for us, both price and location were very important factors. But location in terms of connectivity, as well as just being near our parents, because we knew in the future, if our parents get old, we wanted to be by their side, support them. Or if we have kids, maybe they could help take care, just to be truthful. But also on top of that, when we were looking at the prices, we, as I mentioned earlier, didn't want to be shredded with debt. We really considered, how much can we afford? And in the end, we were quite lucky. We got a 5-room in Bukit Panjang area for under 500,000. So that was really within our budget. It was something that we could afford. And so I would say we really balanced these two considerations. Both were equally important to us.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes when you start to look for a home and you come to the realization that, what you had in mind, where you had in mind really would not match the budget. And so it is sometimes viewed as a trade-off. I think like sacrificing the location for the price. So Minister and Eugene, how should buyers approach this very crucial decision? I mean, how you reframe your perspective on, is this a trade-off? I mean, you can, on one hand, own a home and secure a long-term financial future versus settling for something.
I wouldn't put it quite that way, where it's either dream or settle for something less. It's really like anything else that you buy that you really want, and then you look at your budget. But the key thing is that, unlike other things, this is a very big ticket item. And the payment takes place over several years, sometimes a couple of decades. So you have to think very carefully about it. And different people have different priorities and aspirations. They have different budgets. And importantly, they have different life circumstances. Because if you're a young family with a primary school going child, then obviously a primary school nearby matters, and you want to make sure that you have a place that's near a school, right? But if your children are grown up but your parents are aging, then you may want to factor in being close to your parents. So I would say the way to approach it really is start off by asking yourself, I think better start with budget. How much do I actually have? Then the next thing is, once you have worked out how much you actually have at your disposal, then the next thing would be to ask, what are the things that matter to me? Is it school for my child? Is it proximity to my parents? Is it being near to a gym? Is it being near to MRT so that I make sure that I don't get into work late? Or is it just being near a shopping mall because I like the vibe? Or I just don't want to be with other people, so I just prefer something that is near nature? Those preferences and priorities differ from people to people, right? And then of course the third thing will be go and talk to HDB. And this Eugene can tell you more, because they have to do the HFE assessment and help you to understand whether the budget that you have would really meet some of the selections that you want to make. But also, HDB can also point to what are the priorities and the grants and the schemes that may actually help you financially and also make the choice a bit easier for you. Yeah. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, but it does need careful thought.
So you've given us that starting point, budget. Look at the budget, and we can get an official, calculation of really where our budget stands in the grand scheme of things with HDB, the HFE letters. Can you tell us more about that? How does an HFE letter work, and then what happens after that?
Sure. Minister brought up a very good point. It's about budget. This is something that's very important, and I think that most home buyers requires to do a little bit of planning, with a bit of advanced planning. For starters, I think like a starter pack, what it can actually do is that you can actually go apply for HDB flat eligibility letter. In short, we call it the HFE letter. And with the HFE letter, it gives you a complete picture of the amount of housing grants, housing loans that may be available to you. Now, with that, this will put you in a very good state in terms of what is available, what your finances, your budgets are. So if I were to put it down to financing itself, there are 4 main categories. So we talk about having your HFE letter, you would know your CPF housing grant. Now for new flat buyers, you may receive up to about 120,000 in enhanced CPF housing grant for new flats. For HDB loan, if you are able to qualify for HDB loan, do take note that the loan to value is actually at 75%, which essentially means that the remaining 25% for the purchase of your flat comes from your CPF as well as your cash savings. And now the third factor would be then your CPF savings. Minister has also mentioned, you start early, you start working, you start building up your CPF savings. This CPF savings can actually help you with your initial down payment. And subsequently, when you purchase your flat, you can use it to buy your flat. And once you collected the keys to your new flat, when you start servicing your monthly loan repayments, your CPF can actually use, you can actually use your CPF savings to finance, to service your monthly installments. And like what Minister has mentioned, over the past few years, the statistics have shown that actually most of the people are actually taking out very little cash outlay, or if not, no outlay at all. And the last is cash savings. While we don't wish to touch onto our cash savings, but if there is a need to, I think what you need to consider is about what is your long-term housing plans? Is there anything that you need to consider? For example, within your home buying journey, you will know that, oh yes, you need to pay for this, you need to buy your flat, but what comes after that? You need to take into factor renovation costs, these additional expenses like starting a family, raising a kids. So having to plan out your finances, having the budget, then that would put you in a very good situation, a good place whereby you can then now plan what is the flat that you would like to get, and especially in the preferred location.
So Eugene, where can buyers go to find out, the kind of schemes, grants they are eligible for?
Well, the information is actually readily available on our HDB website. So if you're talking about the HFE letter, once you log on to our HDB website, you will be able to find it when you click on buying a flat. It will then guide you to go and apply for a HFE letter. It's actually a very simple 3-step process. By clicking on apply, putting in your information, you can use your SingPass to input all this information, get a preliminary assessment, and then subsequently go for your next step, which is to submit your necessary documents to get your HFE letter approved. Now, once that is done, you will then wait out for the next sales launch. So basically, the HFE letter has a validity of 9 months. So with that itself, you can then plan out, or you can look out for the upcoming sales launches, and then you can take a look which are the locations or within your budget, the areas that you are interested in. And then once you submit it, what you can do is that when the sales launch, it is a 8-day application period. Yeah. So once you are interested in that, you can submit your application. And if you are successful and you get balloted, and then the process goes throughout, and the HDB officers will always be there to guide you throughout the entire
And it's
period.
not first come, first serve, right?
Definitely not.
So you don't have to rush to
No,
camp
I think
at your
that's
computer.
That's a misconception. I think a lot of people would think that, the application window is open. Let me just apply first because I will get a good queue number. But it doesn't work that way. I think we need to understand that this balloting system is a fair system. We need to ensure that it is robust, and that's most important. And how to do so is that within the 8 days application window, what you can do is I think it's a small hack that most people might not know, is that don't rush in to go and apply for it, but you can actually monitor the application rates throughout the 8-day window. You can actually log on to our website, and then you can check out the application rate. Choose my word of advice is that if you are, if it's within your budget and you can choose a location with a lower application rate, then definitely your chances of getting a ballot number, a queue number will be higher.
Okay, so that's hack number one.
Yes.
I'm going to get more hacks from you.
Well, I think there are still a lot of different schemes in place to help young couples to get their first flat. For example, if you are intending to apply near your families, like Loraine has mentioned, you want to stay near your parents for mutual care and support, we have schemes in place, for example, like the family care scheme, where there are two types. One is family care scheme, FCS, with proximity, where you can apply to stay near your parents. Now, a lot of times, I think I do hear from our customers, from our flat buyers, is that how do I know that this project is within my
Didn't Loraine use Google Maps?
Yeah, I
Did it help?
I went to use the distance function.
There is a better option. Actually, on our website itself, during the sales launch, there is a distance inquiry whereby you can actually use to check out the distance. So in each sales launch, the project will be, each individual project will be shown in the drop-down list, and then you can choose it from there, and then you key in your postal code of your parents' flat, and then you will be able to check out the distance inquiry. It will just tell you whether you are eligible, whether you're within the 4 km, and whether you're eligible for the family care scheme.
There you go, hack number 2. I hope that was helpful.
Much easier than using Google Maps.
Yeah, maybe more accurate as well.
Yeah.
So Loraine, I'm curious now, what was your process like? So the Google Maps thing, what else, what happened in that application process?
Yeah, at the start, when me and my fiancé sat down, we were like, okay, we're ready to, start thinking about getting a house. Truth be told, we were very nervous. First purchase, right? You just can't help but feel like there's so much information. What do I need to look at first? So we were quite thankful. We have friends who had applied, so they advised us, consider all these options, your finances, your location, things like that. And then thankfully, HDB's website was really helpful, so I referred to that a lot, as well as some online resources. I think there are a lot of websites that talk about, what to consider. So from there, we got our HFE letter, we knew what we could afford, we applied, and yeah, we got our flat, so we're very happy. But yeah, but truth be told, it was a very nerve-wracking experience. Yeah, you just can't help but feel, that nervousness when you're getting that, you're buying like something that's it's such a big number, right?
Yeah, a huge price tag. I suppose it's safe to say that most people choose homes based on what they perceive as their needs, right? And so maybe things like workplace or connectivity hubs, mall, schools, as Minister was saying. It so happens that a lot of people also have similar needs, right? A lot of people work in the CBD, for example, and so that may push people to certain BTO projects more than others, which is why we see some are more heavily subscribed than others. And so, Minister, how does HDB manage these competing demands that buyers may have? We talked about the various policy schemes, right? But how do you determine who has a greater housing need? So if, say, I hit the proximity, then I have kids and all that, and I'm looking for at a very heavily subscribed project, does that mean I stand a higher chance because I have all these needs more than someone who also wants that but may not have a child on the way, or that is a location that's not near their parents?
Well, that's a really good question, because what you're really saying is when the demand exceeds the supply, how do we decide, right? And then that leads to priority schemes. So every individual has different needs, but when you're doing it at a policy level, you try to give priority to what we see are broad categories. And one of the broad categories, obviously, for priority is young families or couples, because they're just starting out. They need a home of their own, and many of them would like to start families. And here, under my PMO hat, because our TFR rate is quite low, we really want to make sure that they have a home of their own so they can start their families. So we introduced the priority scheme for married couples and families with young children, because their need is greater. Then there's another category, which is really being close to your family members, especially with an aging population. We've seen over the years more and more people asking, I want this flat, please, because my parents are aging, I need to live near them. And then the other end of the scale is, I have young children and I need to be near my parents because my parents will help look after the children. So we had various schemes like, proximity to our parents and so on, but we then decided to rationalize it and fold everything together into the family care scheme, which also allows singles to apply to live close to their parents, because in the past it was difficult because singles could not apply in mature estates, but mature estates were where the parents were. So you can see that what we're doing is we're giving priority to family formation, we're giving priority to being close to family members that you need to care for. And those are the key priorities. I mean, there may be some others where we give priority, and that's a way of sorting out the demand.
Right. So it brings me to this question that we just got in Pigeonhole as well, which is any advice for those who are still struggling to get a BTO even after multiple attempts over a number of years? Do you mean they would have to stay near their parents? I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, but for some, we don't know the family dynamics for different families and all that, right? So, do they stand a higher chance if they, end up moving near their parents, or if they, I suppose that's what I'm gathering from your...
I think the way to approach it, and Eugene can fill in some of the details, is assuming that because for some people, living near parents is overriding priority.
Okay.
So that will be a determining factor. For others, it will be near to workplace, and that will be a determining factor. But assuming that you are able to access the whole universe of choices, actually you do the Singaporean thing. You go and look and see where will I have the greatest chance, right? And usually it would be the areas where there are less applications. That's assuming that you don't have any other pressing needs, because just logically, the ones that are likely to be less subscribed for, that means the greater your chances. And of course, it goes back to budget, but maybe you might like to add that.
I mean, in terms of, because what the question actually mentioned, they tried multiple times. I think what is more important is to understand that there are schemes in place to help, especially young families, young couples, to actually get the flat. So we did introduce the first-timer married couples, as well as parents and married couples. We call it the FTPMC itself, whereby majority of the flats has been set aside for buyers who are within this category. So if they do qualify, in most other cases, at first-timers, they get 2 ballots. Whereas for people who qualify under the first-timer parents and married child category, they would have an additional ballot chance, which is 3 in total. Now, of course, if a family structure itself, they are, for example, they can qualify for another priority scheme, for example, a third child priority scheme, because ministers talk about the with a third child priority scheme itself, that would then put them with additional balloting chances. So I think it is about understanding what the current situation you are at, and what are the schemes in place to help you to effectively get a queue position. But then I do have to emphasize, having more ballot chance doesn't mean that you will be successful. Because it is, like I mentioned, it is a fair system, it is a robust system itself. So what happens is that we go through a balloting process, it's a fair system, and the additional chances just gives you additional, I would say, additional chances in terms of receiving a ballot queue position. But then again, the queue number may varies, because when we shortlist the balloting numbers together, and then the computer will then randomly assign a queue number to it. So it is very important for flat buyers or aspiring home buyers to actually look at what is available for them.
I think after we introduced this new family priority, majority of them have been able to get it after 2 tries.
2 tries, yes, definitely.
Wow. So yeah, Minister,
But
because
it's fairly recent. It's the last 2 years, I think.
So I have a question that's related to that, because someone asks, how should couples who want to have kids weigh the long BTO waiting time against the significantly higher cost of a resale flat?
Again, I think it very much depends on personal circumstances. If you're able to afford the resale flat, bearing in mind all the different things I talked about, the cash, the CPF, the grants, and so on, and resale, we do have grants for resale flats for up to $230,000. It's a scale, depends on your income. So I think the question you have to ask yourself is, go back again to budget, go back to where the resale flats are, whether you can afford this, and whether the one that you can afford meets the other needs that you have. And if the answer to that question is no, then it means look at BTO. Obviously, right? Because it's speed versus cost. And if the resale is out of your budget, then it has to be BTO. And then within BTO, you go through that same process asking which one can I afford, which development should it be, and which grants can I access, and what kind of priority can I apply for. And that one is really worthwhile having that conversation with HDB.
Okay, so thanks for your questions so far. If you have more, keep sending them in. And of course, to our viewers who are tuning in online, do leave them in the comment section. Somebody will pick it up. Once again, today we are talking about navigating your first home purchase in Singapore. We've heard so much about how HDB prices these BTOs, the schemes and grants available, you know, some handy hacks that you can use when you're on that buying journey. And now I just want to look at the future of BTOs.
I just mentioned that for those who have applied for BTOs and who really desperately need a place, we do have the PPHS, the Provisional Parenthood Housing Scheme.
Okay.
But you must have successfully applied for BTO, and then you can apply to rent from HDB. It's slightly below market, still cheaper than market, but it's not like the public housing rental scheme type of prices. But at least you have somewhere to stay with your family whilst you're waiting for the BTO.
And this is for rental, and is there a period, like a fixed duration on how long they can stay for?
Until the BTO is built.
Yes, until the BTO is
Okay.
ready and for you to collect the keys.
Right. Okay, so that's another option offered, of course, to families. Now, Minister, you have said that, you know, HDB is building more, building faster to meet the housing needs. And so what can we expect from future housing policies?
Well, we're building more, we're building faster, but I think as every Singaporean knows, we have limited land. We've only got this much of land. So it's not like we can continue building at unlimited new spaces. Where we can, you have to see what new areas you can build on, but we may also have to look at what areas we take back. So the Turf Club at Kranji was one of those, where we took it back and we said that we're going to build public housing there. We've also got Turf City at Bukit Timah. Then there's Paya Lebar Airport. So this is what we call brownfield. It's used for some other purpose. And we're doing these big relocations. We're going to move the entire, RSAF out of Paya Lebar, put them somewhere else, and then move in and put in a lot of public housing. This takes time, takes planning. It's quite complex. And then we have to see whether we can go higher. Recently, there was an announcement that said that, flats nearer airports, maybe we can increase the height slightly.
Right.
That would help. Because now I'm at Pasir Ris Changi, and I realized, and I went there, that the
Yes, they only go to 12 or 15 floors.
About 16 at most. And I've been quite used to climbing up and down like 30 stories, right? So I was like,
This is easy.
How come finish so quickly? But so you have to try to go up a bit, and then we also have to try to see how we can recycle land. So have older estates which can be taken back and rebuilt on.
Yeah, I think you just answered the next question, because somebody asks on TikTok, what happens when Singapore runs out of land to build flats? So build up, recycle,
Yes.
and what else?
Well,
Because it has to do with
the
population
four.
as well.
Recycle is a big one. Build up is another, and that's it really, because your land is finite.
Indeed.
So, we have to make the most of what we can. In time to come, we don't know where technology will take us. If you think about it, when we started off in the 1960s and we were building the 12-story flats, those 12-story flats were considered very high. In the middle of the CBD, there's this hotel that's called the 7-story hotel. I'm not sure if it's still standing there, but it was called the 7-story hotel because at the time it was built, 7 stories was a big thing. It was really, really high. And that was way back when. So today, and in the 1970s, 80s, I think 20 stories was considered the norm. Then Pinnacle came along, which is our first 50-story building. But now, except if you're near airports, more and more are 40 stories. You don't know in the future how far up you can go and how much more land intensification will be possible. But I do think that with technology, with new building techniques, we'll have to see in the future, but we're constantly studying to see how we can maximize our space.
And of course, the next question is also about how the government will ensure that Singaporeans, the future generations, will be able to continue to afford those good homes. What is the ministry and the HDB looking at, when it comes to the future of its housing policies, given the population changes, the land changes as well?
Well, if you think about it, ensuring that there will be good homes for Singaporeans and ensuring affordability and accessibility is still built on the same fundamentals, which is you start off with the fact that you have finite land, you have to price it right, and then you keep to the market principles, but you make it affordable for Singaporeans by either applying your market discount or the implicit subsidy, assisting them with grants. But Singaporeans also have to do your part by building up your savings, making sure that you have enough in your CPF, making the right choices. And then we will continually look to see where we can build, what we can build more of, and just ensure that Singaporeans continue to have good homes. But it's all about financial prudence, budgeting, good governance, making sure that the fundamentals are right.
And so, Minister, just going back to something that you said earlier, so 55,000 flats, BTOs, that the government intends to build across Singapore between 2025 and 2027, and naturally some are going to be in prime areas. Will that lead to higher prices in future as well? I know we talked about how the prices are controlled and related to they also related to the resale market and all that. But how will the government continue to make sure that, especially with
building BTOs in prime areas is not going to lead to higher prices per se. It's not the building of the BTOs that makes the prices go up. It is the fact that in a prime area, prices are generally higher because they are prime by their nature. But because we introduced the new classification framework or the reclassification framework, it means that under this framework, it would be more affordable for Singaporeans than it would have been under the old mature, non-mature estate framework. Under the old framework, you would basically, get only X dollars subsidy, and that means that the amount that you have to pay out will be a lot higher. Under the new classification framework, we give a greater subsidy. So the amount that you have to pay out is less. But it comes with conditions because you have to be fair. Because otherwise there'll be this lottery effect where you get it at a lower price and then you sell it, resale, and then get a big uplift. So it comes with conditions, a longer MOP, 10 years, a restricted market to which you can sell, which is basically eligible BTO buyers, and then there'll be some other conditions as well. But it does mean that the price tag will be smaller for you in terms of the cash outlay. It's bigger for government because the subsidy is larger.
Okay, so we know what the government is doing. We've heard quite a bit about policies as well. And now I'd like to look at what role personal expectations should play versus, of course, government policy in terms of long-term housing affordability. And Loraine, I know you haven't even moved in yet, but I'm going to ask you to think about your future, your future basically, especially as you enter the next phase of life. I mean, how do you think your housing needs will change as you go through, the different stages?
Right. Truth be told, when I grew up, my parents, we lived in Pasir Ris. We lived there. I grew up there, right? It's been almost 25 years. And that home for me was like what I envisioned my BTO journey to be, that my first house would be my forever home. But when we had to move to the west side due to my grandfather's illness, I realized, actually, there may be possibilities where my future might change. Maybe my parents need support nearer, or they need to move in and I need a bigger house. So it made me realize that, Oh yes, indeed, my first home may not be my forever home. But what mattered more is like when I get my first place, how do I turn it into that home for me? So for example, thinking about how I'm going to renovate the place, make it nice, and also just keep an open mind that perhaps in the future I will need to look at the resale market or perhaps other housing options when my life needs change. Yeah.
I'm going to take a question now from Pigeonhole. So somebody asks, the proportion of singles occupied households in Singapore has been on the rise. Any insight into our future housing strategy for this group? So this one is asking about singles occupied households in Singapore.
Right. We have made a few moves. In the recent years, last time singles could only buy in non-mature estates, and we've removed that restriction. Now singles can buy two-room BTO, provided you meet all the eligibility criterion island-wide. And then we've had some enhanced housing grants which apply to singles as well. So the resale housing grant applies to singles, so it gives them more access to the resale market. It's a delicate balance. We do know, and we saw this particularly after COVID, because after COVID there's an explosion of people who really wanted their own space after being cooped up, with everybody during the COVID period. But we come back to the finite land, then we come back to the fact that young couples also want to start families. So we're having to do that balancing, because you have a finite supply of land and finite amount of space, and then you have to think between young couples or families with young children versus singles, and then also the seniors who will now need more like community care apartments. So it's a delicate balancing process, and we're still in the process of working out the proportions, but we do understand singles' aspirations, and we're doing what we can. We've said that this is an issue that we're looking at.
Okay.
I think to add on to what Minister has mentioned, I think to help singles to even get a BTO flat itself, I think recently we also introduced the family care scheme with proximity. That actually was extended out to singles as well, meaning to say singles can also now apply for the family care scheme with proximity, because we do understand with an aging population, there are going to be scenarios whereby singles may want to now live near their parents for mutual care and support. So with that in place, that actually increases their chances of being balloting, because in the past, singles, they wouldn't be able to apply near their parents. It was only extended to married child priority scheme. It was a married child priority scheme. Yeah, so now this is also extended to singles. So that is the move the government, HDB has put in place to actually move to help singles, to provide more greater support to singles.
Okay.
Yeah, I used to get quite a lot of appeals.
Yeah, I imagine.
For singles wanting to live near their parents. But since this priority scheme was introduced, far fewer appeals.
Okay. Well, I have another question from Pigeonhole. So, amenities are important to house hunters. How is HDB working with agencies to make every home a good home?
A lot of coordination work goes on behind the scenes, which is not immediately apparent. But whenever a HDB estate is designed and the master planners work on it, they have to work closely with URA, because URA looks after land use. URA makes the determination after consultation with agencies on what kind of amenities are nearby, because they are the ones who specify land use. There has to be a close interaction with LTA, because whether MRTs are going to be built, and if they're going to be built where the stations are, where the bus stops are, and most importantly where the linkways are. Linkway is very important. And then also you have to look at overall master planning. Do you put it right next to an area that's very, very noisy or not? And all of these things. So there's quite a lot of discussion and interaction between the various agencies in order to design an estate.
Right.
And then within HDB has a whole team of architects, designers, planners, and they're constantly looking to see how to improve the designs, how to give greater access to nature, how to improve the landscaping, how to make sure that the day-to-day functions are better and more improved. Even things like children's playgrounds, they have changed quite a lot in
Yeah.
the years.
They're no longer so simple, actually. They're very
Yeah.
complex, and they have like aspects where it involves your brain, your mind, your thinking, not just a slide and a
That's
staircase.
Right. So there's quite a bit of research that goes
Yeah.
into this, and even in the landscaping. Because you need to choose plants that are easy for maintenance. You've got to choose ones that don't have too much pollen, too much smell, and like you see those, what they call the crocodile tongue plants, those actually absorb carbon the most. So you have more of those. There's a whole series of things. Oh, and thematic. Because if you're near the sea, it may have a certain theme. If you're inland, it may have a different theme. So yeah, HDB works on that.
Fascinating. I also wanted to know if it's true that, areas tend to get more amenities if the population there is like sufficiently sized. So, more people, therefore it makes more sense to open another coffee shop here, because if we don't have the demand coming from the residents, the shop's not going to sustain itself. I mean, same for MRT stations being open much later because the population in that area has not really been grown. It's a bit chicken and egg, right? Because you can't draw people in if you don't have the...
I think that used to be the approach, but more and more we're trying to be proactive and forward-leaning and forward-thinking. So the most important thing is look at the size of the estate that you're building, and also to look at what's next to it. Because if right next to it there's a very busy town center with a lot of amenities, then you don't have to put in, right? But if this is a bit further away, I think we now feel that it's probably better to provide upfront as to whether, like childcare, for example. In the past, you might wait for people to move in and then have their kids, and then by that time they're knocking on your door saying, where's the childcare? Now we're looking to see how we can plan for the childcare to be there earlier, and whether or not the childcare can actually start operations earlier. This delicate balance too, because if you do it exactly when they move in, the children are not conceived and born yet, right? Then you have this childcare that's trying to operate and that got no business because no kids. So the balance and the timing is quite important, and HDB works closely with ECTA on that.
Okay.
That's the Early Childhood Development Agency.
Okay. We have more question from Pigeonhole. When can we expect the next review on BTO eligibility criteria, including household income threshold, minimum age, and so on? So basically asking when we can expect the next review.
That one we'll have to ask the CEO of HDB. We do regular reviews, and if we think that it needs to be changed, we will do so. So at this point of time, all I can say is that we do regular reviews, and you can be assured of that.
Okay. We're fast approaching the end. I just have a question for you. The changing housing demands, the land changes, the population changes as well. How do you expect housing preferences to evolve in the future? And what is your vision?
They're two quite separate things. But how do we expect it to evolve? I think HDB homes will evolve depending on what our population needs and wants. So if you think about how flats were built in the past, the slab blocks, for example, there was less privacy, right? Because the design is just a straight line. Everybody who's walking past can look into your window and see what you're doing, and they can even look into your bedroom as well, because that's how they were designed. Then slowly the designs evolved to give a bit more privacy. And then now it's not just privacy. HDB looks to see where the sunlight comes in, at which point of time, because some people want the morning sun, nobody wants the afternoon sun shining in. And we've also found that younger Singaporeans now want a bit more flexibility with their space. That's why we introduced the concept of the white space flats, where you have fewer walls, and it allows people to change the furniture around or reconfigure according to how they would like to do it. So I think as user and customer demand changes, the flat designs will have to change as well. And even the taste of what people do in terms of activities There's a lot of demand for pickleball right
I was
now.
gonna ask.
But you know, pickleball.
You're gonna make it soundproof first?
Yeah, we'll have to find some way of either soundproofing or sighting them away from the flats. But that's just an example, right, of how tastes change. Last time it was squash courts,
Right.
or badminton courts. There's still demand for badminton, not so much for squash, but pickleball demand is really increasing. And our vision is really where Singapore can continue to be a place where every Singaporean has a home, whether as a family or as individuals, and that this is a place where you know that this is where you belong. I think that's what we really want, and a place where you can go through all your different stages of life happily, from the time that you have your first child to the time that you're middle age, then your children move out, and then you become older. But throughout that entire journey, you're vested with interest in a home in Singapore because this is home.
Okay, well, Minister, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. We are almost at the end of our session today, and we thank you for your time. We, of course, would like to give away some prizes. We've got some e-vouchers to share with you. All you need to do is just submit your answer to us. The correct answer, of course, we'll be in touch with you for that prize. So if you're watching online, if you're dialed in on Instagram or TikTok, DM us, direct message us the answer. And if you're watching right here, if you are on YouTube, you can email it to us today@mediacorp.com.sg. The question is, what are the 3 new categories under the new flat classification framework? So what are the 3 new categories under the new flat classification framework? Remember, once again, if you're logging in online on TikTok and Instagram, DM us with your answer. And if you are right here, you can just email us. For our YouTube viewers as well, it is today@mediacorp.com.sg. And that is it for this very special edition of CNA Today Goes Live. We've been talking about navigating your first home purchase in Singapore. Minister, thank you so much for your time. Minister Indranee Rajah, Minister in the Prime Minister's Office, the Second Minister for Finance as well as National Development. Loraine Lee, our senior journalist at CNA Today, and Eugene Tan from HDB. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for being here, spending your Saturday with us. And for all of you who've tuned in online, we hope you enjoyed this session, and we will see you soon. Thank you.